Raising the bar for restaurants in Texas. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angle brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com, to whom we are eternally grateful. Gentlemen, Governor Greg Abbott, who's the Republican governor of Texas, put in place some restrictions in the recent past that specifically restricted the ability of bars to conduct their business. And so bars around the state had to shut down. But of course, clever people the Texans are, they are trying to find all kinds of ways to, feed their families, keep the money coming in, keep their employees employed and things like that. And so
selfish plague-spreading bastards.
Yes, can you believe these capitalist pigs? In any case, they have noticed that the restriction calls a bar a business that generates at least 51% of its revenue from the sale of alcohol. So if you can figure out a way that the sale of alcohol does not equal at least 51% or no more than 50% basically of your business, then you can continue to operate. For example, your restaurant, as many restaurants also serve alcohol. And you can kind of bring this down to the micro level by thinking, if you go into a restaurant and buy a hamburger and 2 beers, essentially that's a bar. So Stephen Green, they found all kinds of clever ways to get around this. Some bars are telling the state that they are in effect restaurants, and they're able to do this because under the law or under the governor's restrictions, if you can project food sales in excess of that 50% threshold, then you can say, well, yes, we plan to operate a restaurant, and these bars are reopening. Some restaurants are actually in jeopardy of being shut down because they appear to be bars, because obviously alcohol generates a lot more money. Steve, what strikes you more here? The kind of thoughtless nature of government or the incredibly thoughtful nature of small business people?
Can't we embrace the healing power of and?
Embrace away.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole notion that you have to beg permission to run a business is just anathema to the American dream and the American way and all the rest of the things that make this such a great country. And even in a state like Texas, it's still become the norm, and it makes me sad. What I'm glad to know, what I divined from this news story is, we've been wearing masks, we've been social distancing, but it turns out the only thing you need to avoid a nasty coronavirus infection is a cheeseburger. This is fantastic news. I love this. I love cheeseburgers. If it also turns out that cheeseburgers prevent cancer, I'm going to live forever, for a very, very long time. Yeah, I love this. The law is an ass. We all know this. This whole idea of you can divide a line at 51% and say this activity is safe. But at 49%, this very same activity is unsafe. It's lunacy. It's idiocy. What I'm waiting for is some smart restaurant to start offering what I'm going to call the Steve Special. And what that is it's a $20 plate of French fries with a free martini. Make mine a Bombay Sapphire with a twist of lime. I'll be a happy customer. I might even eat the fries.
It's a condiment.
So, Bill, some businesses are trying to get around this by basically saying, look, if you want to have alcohol, you've got to buy food, because they're trying to keep that ratio in balance. There's a business not too far from where my other work is called Lava Cantina. And I've been to Lava Cantina. They serve a wicked good brunch. And it's a combination, one of these bar and restaurant with an outdoor area that has kind of an amphitheater where they have bands. And they get some pretty big name bands, including some names that were like big names when I was young, but aren't as big anymore, but still you'd love to go see them. And so what they have figured out is when they redid their numbers and calculated in the cost of the concert tickets, they were able to push their ratio down to alcohol being only 39% of their revenue, and therefore they don't have to fire 100 people. Bill, there's another place a place that I mentioned before, El Rey Muerto, which I think means the dead king, requires patrons to buy food. Going to the food model cost that guy about $10,000 up front to get things going. Another business, there's a woman who owns 2 bars, one called the Double Wide and the other called the Single Wide. So these are classy joints, I'll tell you. And she said she can't afford to open the food operation because it would cost her some $30,000 to set up the kitchen, and about half of that, believe it or not, is for the grease trap. 2/3 of Texas breweries think they'll close this year. Bill, why is it that bars can't do what any other business can do, like the retail store where I work, and say, okay, we've got sensible guidelines to try to prevent the spread of disease. We will observe social distancing. We'll wear masks. We'll clean things frequently. Why do we need to segregate bars into a separate category?
Because of reasons. Scientific reasons.
Republican reasons?
No, scientific reasons. And let's just leave it at that. It's interesting how just even in the face of something that's still pretty oppressive, Texas differs so much from California in terms of all the little loopholes and ways out and stuff. It's very hard for anybody who's not grown up in this culture to understand how a fundamentally law-abiding group of people, which we are, takes such tremendous delight in their ability to break the law when the law needs to be broken. This is the land that invented the radar detector, I might remind you. And so when there's a law that needs to be broken, I think we are unsurpassed at this. When you were talking about the situation in terms of how they were basically juggling things to become in one category as opposed to another, I couldn't help but think about the record here in California, whose politicians far, far, far stupider than they are in Texas, who basically spent the last 15 or 20 years trying to ban the AR-15. And so in order to ban the AR-15, they passed legislation that said that you can't have the pistol grip. And if it has a pistol grip plus a detachable magazine, then it's illegal. So the lawyers for the people said, well, what's the definition of detachable magazine? And the lawyers for the state said, well, it means that it has to be something that you can't remove without a tool. You can't just push a button and have it drop out. So the next day, I imagine, somebody started manufacturing AR-15s with the bullet button. The little latch that drops the magazine was removed. It's replaced by a round thing that has a recessed switch, and you cannot detach the magazine without a tool. But if you take the tip of a bullet for an AR-15 and put it in there, magazine drops out just fine. Now, after several years of being outsmarted and hounded by the genius of the gun owners here in California, it went a second step. They said, okay, well, now what we're going to do is we're going to say, in order to get rid of the AR-15, now we're going to change the rules. Now we're going to say, now we've got you. You stupid citizens. Now we're going to say that in order for your gun to be legal, you have to disassemble the AR-15 in order to reload it. Now, they originally had Bushmasters out here where you would just pull the back pin out and crack it. And you'd put 10 rounds in a sealed off, welded shut thing and close it up, and they were useless. But some guy figured out it's like a $30 to $60 adjustment or something. Now on the back of my AR-15, which I may or may not own, the back pin is replaced with this tiny little thing. When you pull the thing, the back of the AR-15 opens that much, just that much. And when it does that, the replacement lever that's back now drops the magazine out of the gun. You can reload faster than you could before because I have disassembled the weapon in order to reload it. And so when you see this kind of thing and you think about the amount of money and lawyers and stuff that the state has put into these kind of awful laws, and then you realize that some guy in a workshop someplace, right, figured out, just a little lever, crack it that much. I've disassembled my rifle. I can't fire it in this condition. So therefore it's legal again. Maybe you should just leave the thing legal. How's that for an idea? Anyway, all of that simply to say that the reason that the people will always be smarter than the government is because the government is trying to set a set of standards that applies to everyone every time. And that's why this will not work. They probably in their heads thought, well, the bars are higher density than restaurants, so we need to get rid of bars. Okay, well, how do you define a bar? Well, a bar is a place where, you sell more alcohol than food. Okay, so if I sell more food than alcohol, then am I a bar? Well, I guess not, because I just defined what a bar is. So what are the numbers? It's 50-50. So if I sell 50.6% of my total revenues are food, then I can open again, right? Yeah, well, that's the law. That's what it says. This is why absolutes don't work, and it's why the national speed limit was such a failure, and that's why they invented radar detectors, and that's why people are doing what they're doing in Texas. It's a bad law, and people know it, and there's no basis for it, and so we will continue to apply our ingenuity to defeat it.
The Texas Restaurant Association says some 1,500 businesses ranging from coffee shops to steakhouses had to inadvertently shut down when this rule was passed. Some 35,000 people lost their jobs as a result of that. The restaurant industry is already struggling, of course, and up to 30% of restaurants could go out of business by the end of the year in just this one state. Ladies and gentlemen, I work in a retail establishment that's open every day, through which thousands of people come to shop through our doors. And we observe the common sense guidelines set in place by the CDC and other health agencies regarding wearing masks and the washing of hands and the various other rituals that we have all become accustomed to. We are able to successfully run the business with minimal risk to ourselves and others as a result of that. Any business that wants to follow these guidelines can successfully run a business, whether that's a nail salon like Salon a la Mode in Dallas, or a bar, a steakhouse, or a restaurant. The idea that you would categorize one type of business and say, look, there's just no way that we can imagine you being able to successfully run this business in a safe manner just shows that politicians underestimate the ingenuity of the people over which they wish to rule. And that's why in this country, they do not rule over us. They have their jobs at our discretion with our permission for limited periods of time. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.